Welcome to this week's Witches and Wine, where I am joined by a very special lady, Miss Serafina Angeles. Greetings, Serafina. Thank you so very much for joining me today. I'm always excited to have you on my channel because we usually have so much fun.
We do, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's so good to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have some questions today, and we got quite a few considering I only posted the thing yesterday. So it gives us a little bit of a framework. Are you ready to jump right in? I've got my wine and
I've got my gin and tonic.
Awesome. And we've got the witches.
I'll explain to everybody that I had, I'm not being like awkward or anything. I had intended on having wine with my witches and wine session, but when I opened it and poured it, it was kind of vinegary. Just didn't taste good. So I'm sticking with what I know.
Good gin.
Yeah, good gin and tonic.
Awesome. Well, how about we jump right into the deep end right here? Because the first question, do you have a spell to keep my husband faithful?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so there are various spells that you can do depending on whether it is a general kind of a spell just to keep him faithful or whether you suspect that he's cheating with an individual. So if it is an individual that you suspect of trying to kind of flirt with him or, lure him away in some way, then I would suggest doing a binding on that individual before doing any sort of love magic on your partner. If it is just a faithfulness spell, then there are various candle spells that you can do using a kind of phallus-shaped candle, like hoodoo spells. They're very effective for that reason, and they can also be used as kind of revenge spells. They can be used as love magic spells. They can be used to keep a man faithful, or so that he will only be kind of sexually attracted to you. And they can be used as punishment for an unfaithful partner.
Absolutely. The punishment one, that would be the black phallus. I know there's red and black are the common ones.
Right.
But yeah, those are great suggestions. There are other spells as well. Tons. Like you can do a Google and many spells have been created for a very long time, since the beginning of relationships, I'm sure, to keep partners faithful because, it's the struggle is real. And
there are people who will interfere with happy relationships, and unfortunately, but I do want to mention as well that in terms of specific spells, Become a Living God is going to be releasing a love spell book and video course, and none other than Maggie Moon is going to be featured in it with E.A. Coetting and Rose Crowley. So I'm really excited to see that when it comes out. It'll be filled with loads of love magic spells.
Thank you. Yeah, it's true. And there are some keep your lover faithful spells in there as well, which are really good. So I don't want to give any of those away, but there are, like, you can bind your lover to you. I have a video on my channel, and I actually did it on my own husband just over a year ago. Yeah, it was an actual thing. I did a 31 days of magic, and I used my husband's sock to make the poppet, and it's a really easy spell. Like you don't have to sew, you just use string, and I go through it on there, and it works. So I recommend that one as well, in addition to, the good advice that Serafina gave. Do we have any stop gossip spells?
Oh, so it's funny. We've been kind of talking about something similar-ish.
Yes.
Earlier today. So I would say a freezer spell is the best one for that. So to write your target's name down on a piece of paper, fold it away from you, put it in a jar with water, and stick it in the freezer and forget about it. You can also use an ice cube tray and actually tear up the person's name into letters and put them into each part of the tray.
Oh, nice.
So there's that. mean, again, if someone's working against you, you might want to do a binding on them, or return to sender mirror box type spell. If it is just gossip, then the freezer spell is probably going to be most effective.
Yes, that's a good one too. It's very effective. And there are like shut up spells. The traditional spells use like a tongue, an animal tongue, like a beef tongue or whatever, and you put like spicy hot stuff on the tongue, and you write the petition with the person's name on it, and you stick pins in it, and anytime they open their mouth about you, they're going to be choked up by their own words. It's been around for a really long time, and I'm vegan, so I do a little twist to that, and you can use any plant that resembles a tongue. So there's snake plants. They're also called mother-in-law's tongue. They kind of look like a tongue. You can use that instead, or aloe plant, and you can cut like the tip of the aloe. It kind of looks like a tongue, and cut that in half, and then you'll put your spicy herbs in there, and maybe some chia seeds or things that get really thick, or alum powder, definitely peppers and stuff, and you're going to put that in a jar with a bunch of nasty stuff and focus your intention on it. And anytime they speak ill of you, they're going to choke on their own words. Literally, it's going to backfire, and they're going to choke themselves up, and that usually works very well too.
That's
and then you'll want
the alternatives. I didn't realize that. Like, I'd only ever thought about doing it with the cow's tongue. So that could be a lot easier than getting a cow's tongue and actually getting the
Back in the day, when people hunted more and took care of their own communities and a tribe, whatever, those things were more readily available. Now we would really have to kind of go out of our way to get a tongue. So the plant alternatives work really well too. And you can always, there's always, be resourceful. You can print out a tongue. I mean, really, it's about your intention and throwing that energy back at that person.
Definitely.
Nice. Okay. I want to create a spell using herbs. I've noticed that herbs have so many different properties to them. When I'm casting my spell, how will the herbs know, or the spell know, what they're supposed to do?
Oh, that's an interesting way of thinking about it. How will the herbs know, or the spell know, what they're supposed to do? I mean, that's going to blow my mind a bit because I've never thought about it in that way. So that's like thinking about the herbs or the spell itself as a conscious, separate entity, when in fact it's all about energy rather than a specific entity with a consciousness. So it's our energy, our consciousness, or the consciousness and energy of the demon or spirit that we're working with, that would kind of intelligently connect to the spell and know what to do with that, rather than the spell itself, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It's the intention that you're putting into it. That's the primary way that they will know. This person, by the question, maybe I'm guessing that they might be a bit of a green witch, or a fairy traditional witch kind of thing, or a lot like starting out on that path. And each plant has a spirit, a consciousness as well. So what you can do is, as you're adding them, you can tell them what you want it to do, like rose for love, or chili powder for intense pain, or you can and things like that. And you'll activate the herbs with your intention, each one, if you want. And that kind of builds the spell too. And it's really fun and witchy, when you're doing that, like with each herb and charging it and telling it what to do and putting it in. So that is another way too. But I do understand, like, when you look at herbs, they have sometimes conflicting properties to them, so it could be hard to like pick those herbs for your spells. So just activate them. Like when I was younger, I used to gather just leaves and stuff and put my intention in it, and then tear them up. And I didn't know what I was doing, but, and I didn't have a book telling me what that tree was associated with, or that plant. It was just activated by my desire, my intention, my desire, and I believed it would happen, and it did.
Yeah. It's very natural.
A Luciferian seer once said that I was a gatekeeper. I didn't think to ask her what she meant at the time. Do you have any ideas?
So the gatekeeper would be someone who kind of watches the gate between worlds and is responsible for overseeing who can enter each way, who can come in, who can leave. So I'm wondering if she meant that this person had some sort of natural ability to connect with the spirit world, that she was able to almost like mediate between worlds and have a natural ability to invoke spirits and to perhaps even astral project and travel into other realms during meditation or during deep trance meditation, for example.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think the same thing. It's likely that that's what she meant, because, as you said, gatekeepers are the ones that stand at the threshold, and we know there's spirit guide gatekeepers that kind of act as to connect us with spirits and keep bad ones away. So as a person, yeah, I agree. She probably meant that, that person has a natural gift, and if they want to, they should pursue it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some symptoms of being cursed or being under a psychic attack?
Oh, this is a good one. So, I mean, first of all, I think on a very basic level, you just start to have bad luck. And it's, it seems like too much to be a coincidence. Like, everything will happen at once. So you'll have a run of bad luck. You'll maybe get sick, maybe family members will get sick, or a pet dies or something. So there are the kind of outward signs like that to watch out for. The other thing is if you if you're an adept or you do any sort of witchcraft or you have psychic ability, you can just have a feeling. You can have a dream, or you can just have a really bad feeling about someone or that something isn't right. And if you find that you're anxious all the time and there's no real reason for it, that can often be a sign as well. I mean, I've discussed this quite a lot with EA, and he's always said, if you think you're cursed, and whether you are or not, if you think you're cursed, you are. So you might as well act like you are and do some protection work. So I would say if you are worried about that, even if it's not a curse, even if it is coincidence, if it's a run of bad luck, it does no harm to take precautionary measures and use some spiritual hygiene methods and do some banishing and some return to sender magic and some protection.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on most of the the symptoms. They can get heavier if the curse is going on and on and on, because there are some people that do that. They really don't let stuff go, and it could be for whatever. And they're working it every month for a period of years, let's say. Those symptoms can get really extreme, like to extreme depression, even like going, having some mental illness problems because of it, because everything is just going so bad. And that is one of the afflictions that certain witches can or have been accused of anyway, but they can project onto the target, and psychic attack, if they're sending thought forms to attack you every night, over time it could be deadly. So as Serafina said, if you think that you are, take action right away. It's always better to be on the safe side. Don't wait and wonder, or if you're, am I just being crazy or whatever. No,
Yeah.
if it pops in your head, just be safe and do some psychic hygiene, do the salt water baths, meditate, do aura cleansings, and ward your home, get spirit allies and things like
Yeah.
that. But I know the question was more on the symptoms and the nightmares and that oppressive feeling too, like you said, being anxious. It's like you always feel like there's something wrong, and it's probably because there could be somebody's working against you.
And I find personally that, if someone is working against me, it's quite, I thought before, I didn't know if I was able to detect exactly who it was, but I think, I've realized that I do know, I can't tell who it is. So if someone just is on your mind and keeps popping into your head, and maybe you feel compelled to think about them or to look at their Facebook, and you get a really uneasy feeling, they keep cropping up everywhere in your life, then chances are they're probably working against you. So if you have any sort of psychic ability, then you're going to know exactly where that beautiful magic or even those negative thoughts are coming from. And it doesn't even have to be an intentional curse. It can be jealousy, it can be spite or hatred or resentment. It can be someone that doesn't even realize they're sending that energy your way, but they are.
Yes, because that's another thing. People can accidentally curse other people by their ill intent toward them, or their, negative thoughts, and they don't realize that. Now, sometimes there's a little difference though, like if you're thinking about the person and you're not obsessed with the person, let's say, right? Because there's that too. There's sometimes a person can be obsessed with the person and think that the person is thinking about them when the person doesn't even, think of them. So it's just important to have that, that balance and that psychic hygiene and things like that, so that you can tell the difference. Like, is it something that you're projecting? Because it can happen. Like, are you thinking about this person and then thinking that this person is thinking of you? Like, are you, just getting your own energy bouncing back on the situation? Because that can happen too. But if you're not obsessed with the person, like if the person is literally, not in your life or in your thoughts, and then all of a sudden, for no reason, you start thinking about them, that is a huge sign. Or if you start dreaming about them and you haven't thought of them, until then, that's a big, big sign. So you're right. And believe it. Don't doubt yourself. I think that's the biggest mistake a lot of people do, is they just doubt themselves and question everything. But if you feel it, trust your intuition. It's there for a reason. I know we've been taught that to go against what our gut instinct tells us, but we need to lose that and tap back into self, because self will lead you right every time. Oh, well, I might as well stick on this vein of thought. Do curses come back on the sender?
So if you're cursing somebody who has really strong protection, then it can. So it can bounce back. If you're cursing another adept and they have very strong protection on them, or they have spirits who are their allies and working to protect them, and you don't take steps to protect yourself, then yes, it can come back and kind of bite you. And that's not, in my view, that's not karma. It's not some sort of independent law out there. It is basically that individual's protection. So what I would always say, and I made a little joke about this being like the Biden's torture kill serial killer in a video recently, but it's always wise to make sure that you have all of your protection up and bind an individual before you think about cursing them. Because otherwise it is, if you're cursing someone who has no clue about witchcraft, then they're kind of an easy target. If you know for a fact that they don't, then chances are they don't have very high defenses, but they can still have very protective spirits around them. So it's always worth protecting oneself and binding the target before cursing.
Yes, absolutely. I know in Wicca there's that rule of 3 kind of thing. So I don't know if this is part of the question too. Most of us on the left-hand path, well, all of us on the left-hand path don't subscribe to that sort of thinking that, like you said, there's this invisible law out there that's going to be like, oh, you did this, you're going to get it back 3 times. Wouldn't it be nice if that's how things worked, really, though? Like, wouldn't it be easy, like, to like
the justice system?
But that's really not the way it is. And like Zarafina said, if that person is protected, when you're not taking the precautions, then it could likely backfire on you. Especially if you're casting against another spellcaster. And if you're loud about it too. Some people pick up on this stuff and they'll be like, oh, really?
Exactly.
And then you're causing trouble where maybe there didn't have to be that, too. So try to work it out first. I always say, like, if you can, we're still people. Just because we can first doesn't mean we should as a first response, but try to talk it out. And that's always the first thing. And I think when curses do come back too, if it's not necessarily about the individual, it's about our own guilt, like that we're not completely in alignment, like we're not firm on the justification of performing that curse. And most of the time, I think that's what happens is, we get the kickback from our own self because we knew we were being a little shit and we probably shouldn't have done that, and then we bring it on ourselves. But when you're firm in your resolve and you're fully justified and you send it out and you take all your precautions, you're probably going to be all right. You'll be good to go and not have to worry about it.
Definitely.
If you can't bury a coffin spell in a graveyard, is there somewhere else that it can be disposed of?
So as long as it's off your property, you don't want any remains of baneful magic, on your property or near you. So if you can't bury it at a graveyard, you could bury it at crossroads away from your property. You can also run it in, throw it into running water as long as the water is running away from you.
Yes.
So you wouldn't want to throw it into the sea, for example, and have it come back in waves, or have it in a river that flows towards your home. But you can do that. And that's also good for jar spells because it keeps the jar kind of working. The water keeps shaking the jar, if you like. The other thing is you can actually dispose of it in garbage and just use that as part of your ritual. So if somebody means so little to you that you put them in this coffin box and you want to literally throw them away like garbage, then you can do that. As long as you're doing that with intention, you're throwing it away and thinking of like discarding that person like a piece of garbage. You can do that too.
Yes. And I always advise, if you can time the spell to be like right when you're curb pickup, perfect. You just run out.
Throw it
I've had to do it. Wait, I have another bag
full of coffin boxes.
Yes. Take it. So it doesn't have to necessarily be in a graveyard at all. I mean, it helps because the whole psychodrama really of going into the graveyard, first of all, leaving your offerings, connecting with the spirits, finding a spot near a tree, allying with that tree, asking it to do that, burying it, like, come on. And then, doing it, walking away. It does something to you too. Like, it's going to further empower the spell if you can. Like, there's definitely that extra layer to it.
A great sense of kind of closure as well. I think when you bury something in a graveyard, because it's like that funeral has been passed and the person's buried and gone, and it's an act of closure.
Yes, absolutely. So if you can, graveyards are great. If you can't, there's other ways.
And actually I've picked up some tricks from other witches, like just always have a bunch of flowers and a plant and a little spade, so that if anyone catches you, just say, I'm just digging to plant this.
Yes.
Plant.
Yes, exactly. Like,
you don't want to go in just with a trowel.
Right? Yes. One of the other ways that I learned like a long time ago was you can dispose your spell items at the doorstep of a church. Now, nowadays with cameras everywhere, I don't think that's really the way to go thing, but there's really something like empowering about that too. You know, like me and my some of my friends like 20 years ago would get such a kick out of like thinking what, you know, the priest would think showing up in the morning and picking up these bags and going, what is this? You know, not that I'm encouraging that, but there's, you know, it's one of the traditional ways that you can, if you have nowhere else. If you can't find a crossroad or a graveyard or a garbage bin, it's just a fun little thing to put out there. And until next time, I wish you dark and wild